Before I share this story with you, let me ask you something. Have you ever met someone for the very first time, shook their hand, and within just 60 seconds you knew you would never forget them, while at the same time you've met dozens, maybe hundreds of other people and their names, faces, and stories slipped out of your memory like sand through your fingers? That's the power of a great first impression, and today I'm about to tell you the story of the 1-minute introduction that makes people remember you forever. But before we dive deep into this life-changing story, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications, because the lessons you are about to learn here will not just change the way people see you, they will change the way you see yourself, and I don't want you to miss out on the countless other powerful stories and secrets that will help you rise higher in your personal and professional life. Subscribe now, and let's get started. Once upon a time in a bustling city filled with dreamers, hustlers, professionals, and ordinary folks chasing extraordinary ambitions, there lived a young man named Daniel who constantly found himself frustrated with one recurring problem. No matter how many people he met, no matter how many networking events he attended, no matter how many job interviews he nailed on paper, he never seemed to stand out in the minds of the people he encountered. And it wasn't because he wasn't smart or capable. In fact, Daniel was bright, ambitious, and hardworking, but in a world overflowing with information, faces, and fleeting interactions, he realized that the real competition wasn't just about skills, it was about memory, and memory meant impressions, and impressions meant introductions. So Daniel embarked on a journey to discover the 1-minute introduction that would etch his presence permanently in the minds of anyone he met. And the way he found it is the story I'm about to tell you in detail. A story filled with trial, error, lessons from masters, moments of deep failure, and finally the triumph that gave him the confidence to walk into any room and command not only attention but respect, admiration, and unforgettable presence. Because you see, it all started at a networking event where Daniel had spent 2 hours shaking hands with strangers, exchanging business cards, and repeating the same old dull lines. "Hi. My name is Daniel, I work in marketing, nice to meet you," only to realize at the end of the evening that he couldn't even remember the names of half the people he spoke to. And worse, when he bumped into a few of them again later, they didn't remember him either, which left him standing alone in a crowd of movers and shakers wondering why his existence felt like background noise. And that night as he walked home through the city streets lit by neon lights and buzzing with late-night traffic, he made a decision that he would never allow himself to be forgotten again, and so began his quest, which first led him to books on communication, where he learned about the power of storytelling, psychology of memory, and the neuroscience behind why some people stick in our brains while others vanish. And one phrase stuck out to him from an old mentor's teaching: "People will forget what you say, people will forget what you do, but people will never forget how you made them feel." And Daniel realized that his introduction had never made anyone feel anything. It was robotic, bland, forgettable, so he needed to change not just his words but the emotion behind them. And this is where the real transformation began, because Daniel experimented with countless versions of his introduction, sometimes starting with a joke, sometimes with a story, sometimes with a fact about himself, but each attempt failed until he stumbled across an opportunity that would change everything forever. For one day he was invited to speak briefly at a career fair where hundreds of students and professionals had gathered, and he was only given 60 seconds to introduce himself and explain what he did. And in that single minute he realized he had the chance to either bore everyone or ignite their attention. And in preparation he crafted an introduction built around 3 principles he had learned. First, start with a hook that instantly grabs curiosity. Second, connect that hook to a personal story that makes you human. And third, finish with a line that positions you as memorable and valuable. So when he stepped on stage, instead of saying, "Hi, my name is Daniel and I work in marketing," he looked at the audience and said, "Have you ever bought something you didn't even plan to buy, and afterward you asked yourself, why did I do that? That's what I do. I study why people say yes." And instantly heads turned, eyes locked in, and for the next 30 seconds he shared a story about how as a teenager he once convinced his classmates to donate enough money for a charity project by telling them a single emotional story. And then he closed with a simple line: "So if you want to know how to get people to say yes without pressure, I'm the person to talk to." And in less than 1 minute the audience erupted with applause. People lined up afterward to shake his hand, and more importantly, they remembered him, because the next day when people were recapping the event, several said, "Did you hear that guy who talked about why we say yes?" That was Daniel, and suddenly the invisible young man had become unforgettable. And what's fascinating is that Daniel's story doesn't just belong to him. It belongs to all of us, because whether we're walking into a job interview, stepping into a classroom, meeting someone on a first date, greeting colleagues at a conference, or even introducing ourselves to strangers on the street, every first impression counts, and what Daniel learned is a formula that anyone can apply. Because the secret is not in bragging about achievements or reciting job titles. The secret is in creating curiosity, sparking emotion, and leaving a mental anchor that sticks. And Daniel began teaching others this same method, telling them to craft a 60-second self-introduction with 3 layers: the hook, the story, and the anchor. And when people tested it, the results were astonishing. From a shy graduate who landed her dream job because her introduction made the hiring manager laugh and lean forward in interest, to an entrepreneur who secured investors because his 1-minute pitch told not just what he did but why it mattered, to a young woman who found new friends simply by starting her introductions with, "Want to know the most embarrassing mistake I made in college?" Which instantly made her relatable, human, and unforgettable. And through these examples Daniel realized that memory is built not on facts but on feelings, not on resumes but on resonance. And so he traveled far and wide sharing this secret, standing on stages, coaching clients, mentoring students, each time reminding them that 1 minute is all it takes to be remembered forever. And the longer he shared, the more he saw lives transformed, because a powerful introduction wasn't just a tool for networking, it was a key to unlocking confidence, self-worth, and influence. And the lesson was clear: you don't need to talk for an hour to make an impression, you just need to master 60 seconds that strike like lightning, leaving people illuminated long after you've walked away. And as Daniel reflected on his journey from being invisible in crowds to being unforgettable in moments, he smiled, knowing that anyone, absolutely anyone, could do the same, including you who are listening right now, because your story matters, your presence matters, and all you need is the courage to craft your introduction not as a label but as a spark. And when you do, you'll never be forgotten again. And that's why from this day forward, never let another introduction slip by as just an exchange of names. Take control of your 60 seconds, make people feel something, create curiosity, and anchor yourself in their memory, because the moment you do, doors will open, relationships will flourish, and your influence will rise. If this story inspired you, then don't just walk away. Subscribe right now because I have countless more life-changing stories and strategies to share with you. Stories that will make you unforgettable, unstoppable, and undeniable in every room you walk into. So hit that subscribe button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and remember, your 1-minute introduction can change your life forever.